The rain had been falling since dawn, soft and steady, washing the dust from the tired streets of the old coastal town. Through the misted windows of the cafe, Mira watched the world pass by, umbrellas blooming and closing like flowers in a storm. She wrapped her fingers around a cup of black coffee gone lukewarm long ago, the bitter scent rising like a reminder of everything she was trying to forget. She had returned home after nearly 12 years away. 12 years since she'd sworn never to come back. And yet, here she was, sitting in the same cafe where her mother used to bring her after school, where she had written her first poem on a napkin, where she had dreamed of escaping this quiet, suffocating place. Mira Lang had once been famous, a novelist whose words had set the literary world ablaze. Her debut, The Memory Thief, had turned her into a sensation overnight. Interviews, photo shoots, awards, she'd had it all. But fame was a strange thing. It lifted you high enough to see the stars, but left you dangling when the wind changed direction. It had taken only one mistake to bring it all crashing down. A scandal. A betrayal. A truth twisted out of her control. The story still haunted her. How her editor had accused her of plagiarism. How the media had torn her apart. How her friends had vanished like smoke. No one had waited to hear her side. Her name had become a whisper people used with pity or disdain. And so she had disappeared. Now, 12 years later, she had come back to the town she once called home, not to seek forgiveness, but to find something that still felt real. The cafe door opened with a small bell. Cold air swept in, carrying the scent of wet earth. Mira looked up and froze. "Didn't think I'd ever see you here again," said a low, rough voice. It was Leo, her childhood friend, the one person who had believed in her before the world did. He looked older, his hair streaked with gray, his hands rough from years of carpentry. He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," he replied. "Mind if I join you?" She hesitated, then nodded. He sat down opposite her, glancing at the half-empty cup. "Still can't finish your coffee," he said. Some things never change. They shared a small, fragile smile. For a long time, silence stretched between them, the kind of silence only people with history could share. Outside, the rain thickened. Mira looked down at her hands, at the faint ink stains on her fingers. She had started writing again, though no one knew. "So," Leo said, breaking the quiet. "Why are you here, Mira?" She exhaled slowly. "I needed a place where no one remembers me." He tilted his head. "You really think this town forgets? It just waits." She looked away. He wasn't wrong. Every corner here carried ghosts. The laughter of her childhood, the arguments with her father, the dreams she'd buried when she left. After a while, Leo said, "Your mother's house is still empty. I've been taking care of the garden." That made her heart tighten. The house had been sold years ago, but no one had moved in. "Why?" she asked quietly. He shrugged. Didn't seem right to let it die. The way he said it, simple, sincere, made her chest ache. She wanted to thank him, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she said, "Do you still go to the cliffs?" He smiled faintly. "Sometimes, when I need to think." She nodded. The cliffs, their secret place, where they'd hidden as kids, carved their initials into the rocks, promised to never forget each other. And yet, she had. That night, Mira stood on those same cliffs again. The sea below roared, endless and wild. The air smelled of salt and memory. She closed her eyes, feeling the wind whip through her hair. For the first time in years, she let herself cry, not because of shame or anger, but because she was tired of pretending she didn't care. She whispered into the night, "I'm sorry." The waves answered, crashing harder against the rocks. Days turned into weeks. Mira stayed in a small rented cottage by the harbor, trying to live quietly. She walked the old streets, bought bread from the same bakery that still smelled like cinnamon, watched fishermen mend their nets at dawn. There was something healing about routine, something honest about simplicity. Sometimes, she saw Leo across town, fixing boats or repairing fences. They talked occasionally, careful and polite, like strangers who once shared a secret. But slowly, something began to change. He started bringing her things, fresh vegetables from his garden, books he thought she'd like, small notes with scribbled quotes. She started leaving him letters, short, shy messages tucked into the fence near his workshop. It was like relearning how to speak after years of silence. One afternoon, Mira was walking through the old town square when she heard laughter behind her. She turned and saw a group of teenagers passing a phone around. Her photo flashed briefly on the screen, younger, smiling, from her days of fame. "That's her," one of them whispered. "The writer who lied." Her stomach turned cold. She walked faster, but the words followed her like stones thrown in her direction. When she reached her cottage, her hands were shaking. She wanted to scream, to disappear again, to erase the past. But then she noticed something on her doorstep, a small, carved wooden bird. It was delicate, perfectly shaped, its wings half open as if caught mid-flight. Leo's work. There was a note beneath it. "You can't outrun the past, Mira, but you can outgrow it." She stared at the words for a long time. Then, for the first time in years, she smiled. That night, she sat at her desk, opened a blank notebook, and began to write. Not for fame, not for anyone else, but for herself. The words came slowly at first, then faster, a flood breaking through a dam. She wrote about pain, forgiveness, the quiet beauty of imperfection. She wrote about home, about a woman who lost everything and learned to find peace in being ordinary. To be why Dawn, her hands ached and her eyes were red. But her heart felt light, almost freed. Out a month later, Leo knocked on her door holding 2 cups of coffee. "You look better," he said. "I feel better," she replied. They sat on the porch watching the sunrise. The sea glimmered like glass, and the gulls cried overhead. The world felt still, almost new. "Planning to stay?" he asked quietly. "I think I already have," she said. He smiled. Not the guarded smile from before, but something genuine, full of warmth. And for the first time since she'd returned, Mira realized she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the town, not of her past, not of herself. The silence that had once felt heavy now felt like peace. But deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. That life had one more chapter waiting to be written, and this time, she was ready to face it. The town had started to feel like home again. Mira woke with the sunrise most mornings, brewed coffee, and opened her window to let in the sea air. She wrote every day now, not for an audience, not for redemption, but because it felt like breathing again. Her new manuscript was taking shape slowly, a story about silence, forgiveness, and starting over. She still hadn't told anyone she was writing again. Not Leo, not the old bookseller who always slipped her free paper, not the world that once turned its back on her. It was her secret, and for once, she liked it that way. But peace, as she was learning, was fragile. It never lasted long enough to grow roots. It started with an email. She almost deleted it without reading. The sender's name was blocked by a long chain of numbers. One of those anonymous addresses that always felt like trouble. But something about the subject line made her stop. "We need to talk about the truth." Her stomach tightened. She clicked it open. "Mira, you don't know me, but I know you. I know what really happened 12 years ago, and I think you deserve to be heard. I can help you tell your story if you're willing to trust me. A friend." For a moment, she couldn't move. The words blurred. Her first instinct was anger. Who dared to dig up the past she had buried so carefully? Then came fear. What if it was a trap? A journalist looking for a scandal? But beneath the fear, something else stirred, a flicker of curiosity. What if it was real? She closed her laptop, pushed it away, and walked out to the porch, trying to steady her breath. The horizon shimmered under the late morning sun. Leo was down the road, loading planks of wood into his truck. He waved, and she forced a smile, pretending nothing was wrong. But the email burned in her mind all day. That night, she dreamed of the past, of flashing cameras, of reporters shouting questions she couldn't answer, of people who once praised her now turning their backs. She woke in a cold sweat, her heart pounding. The next morning, she opened the email again. She typed a short reply. "Who are you? What do you know?" Then she hit send. 2 days passed before the response came. "Meet me at the lighthouse, Thursday evening, 7 p.m. I'll bring proof. No name. No signature." Mira stared at the screen for a long time, torn between fear and the gnawing need to finally know. The lighthouse had been abandoned for years, its spiral stairs rusted, its windows boarded. It sat on the edge of the cliffs like a silent witness to everything the sea had taken and given back. She almost deleted the message again. But something inside whispered, "You've run long enough." Thursday came gray and windless. Mira told Leo she was going for a walk. He offered to come, but she smiled and said she needed time to think. She saw worry flicker in his eyes, but he didn't push by the time she reached the lighthouse. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in bruised shades of gold and purple. The air smelled of salt and rust. The door creaked open easily. Inside, everything was as she remembered: cold stone, peeling paint, the faint echo of the sea below. Mira Lang? A voice called softly from the shadows. She turned sharply as a woman stepped into the light, younger than her, maybe late 20s, with short dark hair and a camera slung around her neck. She looked nervous but determined. "My name's Clara," she said. "I'm a journalist. I've been trying to reach you for months." Mira stiffened. "Then you already know I don't talk to journalists." Clara raised her hands. "Please, I'm not here to hurt you. I found something you need to see." She pulled a folder from her bag and handed it over. Inside were printed pages, old emails, and photocopies of documents. Myra's eyes scanned them quickly. Familiar names, old correspondence, the signature of her former editor. The one who had accused her of plagiarism. At the bottom was a message, dated a few months before the scandal broke. "If the story leaks, blame Mira. She'll take the fall. She always does." Her breath caught. The handwriting was unmistakable. Her hands trembled as she looked up. "Where did you get this?" Clara hesitated. "He died last year. I was going through archives for a documentary. I found a hard drive with these files. When I realized what they were, I knew I had to find you." Mira sank onto a broken step, her knees weak. For years, she had believed she was the villain of her own story, that she had failed, that maybe she had done something wrong. But now she knew the truth. She had been framed. Clara sat beside her. "You could clear your name. Go public with this. I can help you." Mira shook her head. "It's been 12 years. The world doesn't care anymore." "Then do it for yourself," Clara said gently. "Don't you want to be free?" Mira looked out toward the sea. The sky had turned to deep indigo, the waves whispering below. Freedom. The word felt heavy, unfamiliar. Later that night, she told Leo everything. They sat on the porch, the light from the cottage casting long shadows on the ground. Leo listened quietly, his brow furrowed. "So, it was never your fault," he said finally. She nodded. "All those years, I carried shame that wasn't mine." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Then tell the truth. Let people know." She hesitated. "And what if they don't care? What if they've already decided who I am?" "Then at least you'll know," he said. "That's what matters." In the following days, Mira wrestled with the decision. The folder sat on her desk like a silent challenge. She reread the letters, the emails, the evidence, each piece fitting into a puzzle she hadn't dared to finish. Her heart wanted peace, but her mind wanted justice. One morning, Clara visited again, this time bringing a recorder and a notebook. "If you want, we can do it quietly," she said. "No headlines. Just your story, in your words." Mira looked at her, really looked. There was sincerity in the young woman's eyes, the kind she hadn't seen in a long time. "All right," she said. "Let's begin." The interview lasted hours. At first, Myra's voice shook, each memory like reopening an old wound. But as she spoke, something inside her began to lift. She talked about the joy of writing, the pressure of fame, the betrayal that shattered her trust. She talked about the silence that followed, the exile, the loneliness, the healing. Clara listened without interrupting, tears glinting in her eyes more than once. When it was over, she said softly, "You've carried this alone for too long." Mira nodded. "But maybe I needed to learn who I was without all the noise." A week later, the article went live. Clara had kept her promise. It wasn't a tabloid exposé, but a quiet, dignified piece titled "The Silence That Spoke the Truth." It spread quietly at first, shared by readers who still remembered Myra's books, then by writers, then by fans who had never stopped believing in her. Messages began to flood in. Old friends, readers, even strangers. Most of them said the same thing: "We're sorry. We never knew." For the first time in 12 years, Myra's name was spoken with kindness, but not everyone was pleased. That night, her phone rang. The number was unknown. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Mira Lang," a cold voice said. "You should have stayed silent." The line went dead. Her heart pounded. She looked out the window. The street was empty, shadows moving under the flicker of a lamppost. Was it a threat? or just a cruel prank. Either way, the peace she had built began to tremble again. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. The cottage door left slightly open. A stack of papers moved from her desk. Footsteps outside at night. Leo insisted on staying over, but she refused. "I can't live in fear again," she said. Still, she started locking the doors twice. One evening, she went down to the beach to clear her head. The sky was burning orange, the waves gentle against the sand. For a moment, everything felt calm. Then she saw someone standing near the cliffs, too far to recognize, but close enough to feel watched. When she blinked, the figure was gone. That night, she dreamed again, but this time, not of the past. She dreamed of falling, of voices whispering her name, of pages burning in her hands. She woke gasping, the echo of the sea still roaring in her ears. She looked around the room. Something felt off. The folder, the one Clara had given her, was gone. The folder was gone. Mira tore through the cottage, opening drawers, checking under piles of paper, flipping through every notebook. Nothing. It had vanished as if it had never existed at first. She tried to tell herself she'd misplaced it, that she'd left it at Clara's or in Leo's truck. But deep down, she knew someone had taken it. Her pulse quickened. She locked the doors and sat on the edge of her bed, heart thudding like a drum in her chest. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps, every gust of wind like a whisper. She grabbed her phone and called Clara. "Hey, it's me," Mira said, her voice shaking. "The folder's gone." "What do you mean, gone?" "I mean it's not here. Someone took it. I don't know when." Clara's voice tightened. "Okay, listen to me. Don't panic. I'll come by first thing in the morning. We'll figure this out." But Mira couldn't wait. The silence in the house was unbearable. She kept thinking about that phone call. You should have stayed silent. What if they were still watching her? Morning came gray and heavy with fog. Clara arrived with 2 coffees and a notebook full of leads. "I made copies," she said quickly. "Everything you had in that folder. I saved it all. Whoever took it, they won't be able to erase the truth." Mira exhaled, relief and fear tangling inside her. "You're sure?" Clara nodded. "Positive. I backed it up to 3 drives and sent one to my editor." Mira leaned back, trying to calm the trembling in her hands. "Then why do I still feel like I'm being hunted?" Clara hesitated. "Because whoever did this knows the story's real now, and that makes you dangerous to them." For the next few days, things escalated. A window shattered in the middle of the night. Her tires were slashed. A dead seagull was left on her porch, wings spread wide. Leo insisted she go to the police, but Mira refused. "They won't believe me," she said. "They'll think it's paranoia or some desperate author looking for attention." He clenched his fists. "Then I'll handle it." "No," she said firmly. "I won't let you get dragged into this. It's my fight." But Leo didn't listen. The next evening, he followed a car he'd seen parked outside her house several times. A black sedan with tinted windows. It led him down the coast road toward the cliffs before suddenly turning into an abandoned quarry. When he approached, the car's headlights flicked off. He got out, walking slowly toward the darkness. "Hey, who are you? What do you want from her?" No answer. Then, a sudden flash, and the car roared back to life, speeding past him, nearly grazing his shoulder before disappearing into the fog. When he returned, Mira was waiting on the porch, pacing. When she saw his face, pale and tense, she didn't have to ask. "They're not done," he said. "Whoever they are, they're warning us." That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop casting long shadows across the room. For the first time in years, she opened her old journal, the one she'd stopped writing in after the scandal. Inside were scribbled notes, fragments of guilt and grief, dreams she had buried. She wrote one line at the top of a blank page. "If the truth costs everything, is it still worth it?" Then she began to write. Not a book, not an article, but a confession. She wrote about her mistakes, about the choices she'd made out of fear and pride. She wrote about the silence that became her prison, about the people who helped her rebuild her soul. She wrote until the first light of dawn crept through the window, until her eyes burned from exhaustion. When she finished, she saved the file, printed it, and sealed it in an envelope. On the front, she wrote, "For Clara, if something happens to me." The following day, Clara called with urgent news. "I traced the emails," she said breathlessly. The anonymous messages. They came from a server linked to your old publisher. Mira froze. That's impossible. I double-checked. Someone high up's been covering tracks for years. The person who framed you. He wasn't acting alone. A chill spread through Myra's body. So this isn't over. No, Clara said. It's just beginning. Later that night, Leo convinced her to stay at his place for safety. The air smelled like sawdust and sea salt. His little cabin cluttered but warm. Mira sat by the window, staring out at the dark horizon. Do you regret speaking up? He asked softly. She thought about it. No, I regret staying silent for so long. He nodded slowly. You always said stories can heal. Maybe this one will, too, even if it hurts first. She smiled faintly. Maybe. But the peace was short-lived. Near midnight, Leo's dog began barking furiously. Then, a loud crash outside. Leo grabbed a flashlight, but Mira stopped him. Wait. They moved quietly to the window. The truck's windshield was shattered, the air thick with the scent of gasoline. And then, under the porch light, a symbol painted across the wall in red. Silence. Leo swore under his breath. That's it. We're calling the police. But when the police arrived, the message was gone, scrubbed clean, as if it had never existed. The officers exchanged skeptical looks. Maybe it was kids, one said. You two should get some rest. Mira wanted to scream. Over the next days, fear began to twist into resolve. She called Clara. I want to finish this. Publish everything. Not just the documents, the whole story. My version. Clara hesitated. If we go public now, they'll retaliate. Let them, Mira said. They've already taken everything from me once. They don't get to silence me again. There was a pause, then Clara's voice steadied. Then let's do it together. The article went live 3 days later. A full investigation, complete with documents, testimonies, and Myra's own words that it spread like wildfire. News outlets picked it up, readers shared it, and within hours, Myra's name was everywhere again, but this time not as a disgrace. Headlines read, Author framed, the scandal that wasn't. 12 years of silence. The truth about Mira Lang. People demanded answers. The publisher's executives scrambled to deny involvement, but Clara's evidence was airtight. It was over. For the first time, Mira felt the weight lift, not completely, but enough to breathe. But victory came with a cost. That night, while Clara drove home from the city, her car was forced off the road. She survived, but barely. A concussion, broken ribs, and bruises. When Mira got the call, she felt the floor fall away. This isn't justice, she whispered. It's war. She went to the hospital the next morning. Clara was pale but conscious, her voice hoarse. Don't stop, she whispered. Promise me you won't let them win. Mira took her hand. I promise. When she left, the sky was a dull gray, heavy with unfallen rain. As she drove home, she noticed a car following her. Black sedan, tinted windows. Her heartbeat quickened. She turned down the coastal road, hoping to lose them, but the car matched her every move. Finally, she pulled over near the cliffs, the same place where she'd met Clara months ago. The wind howled through the grass, waves crashing far below. The car stopped behind her. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a dark coat, his face shadowed by the fading light. Mira Lang, he said calmly. You've caused quite a mess. She didn't move. Who are you? Someone who preferred things the way they were, quiet. He took a step closer. Delete everything. Walk away. You've proved your point. Myra's pulse hammered. No, I'm done being silent. The man sighed, as if disappointed. Then I guess this is where your story ends. He reached into his coat, but before he could move further, a voice shouted from behind. Step away from her. Leo. He'd followed her. The man turned sharply, too late. Leo tackled him to the ground, the two struggling near the edge of the cliff. A flash of movement, a cry, and then silence. When Mira looked, the man was gone. The sea below swallowed everything. After that night, the investigation intensified. Police found connections between the man and the publishing company. Hush money, deleted emails, blackmail. It became national news. Mira and Leo were questioned for days, but eventually cleared. Clara recovered and published the final installment of the story, The Cost of Truth. Mira watched from her window as the world moved on, this time with her name no longer in shame, but in respect. Months later, she walked again by the lighthouse. The sea was calm, the air cool, She placed a single page in the wind, the last page of her new book. Sometimes silence isn't peace. It's the space before courage to as the page fluttered away. She smiled softly. Her story wasn't over. But for the first time, it finally felt like hers.